All right, guys. Well, that just I love that. I love being able to just not just see it, but have the support of so many great leaders around me. And I'm telling you, leading a church is never easy. This year definitely wasn't easy. So to have people in my life like that is just invaluable. Love them to death, and I want to share with you as well some of my own encouragement as well. And this year has been a year that I could have never imagined what it was going to be like if everything went by the book, because it was all brand new to me too. And then everything happens, but I tell you what, this has been 100% one of my favorite years in ministry ever. And part of that is, it's difficult, but do you guys ever really remember the really great times? Not really. Most of the time you remember the things that are challenging and the way people in your life came around you during that season, and that has been the case for this year and this church. And I just love the way and appreciate so deeply the way you guys have came around Kenzie and me and my family, and just love the opportunity to do these kinds of things together, to be able to hang out in a variety of new ways now, and spend time with each of you. And I'll tell you, you guys you've done more in my heart and my soul in ministry than many have in a long time. So thank you, genuinely, sincerely from my heart. But this is ultimately what this is all about. This is what the mission of the church is all about. It's about blessing other people, right? It's inviting the power of our holy God in to bless other people. It's the selfless mission to care for others before ourselves. And I'm just so grateful that you guys have done that, not only for us, but all the people in your circles over this past year. But I want to share a little bit more about how that has, how that vision has taken hold originally in my heart. And I want to talk about how that's going to look going forward as well this upcoming year. And of course, where are we at? 4:38, and we're definitely past where I thought we were going to be in my detailed little sheet. And I gave myself 20 minutes, and you guys know how that goes when Mitch Sheen gets 20 minutes, right? It usually doesn't go 20 minutes. And so here I am, kind of back against the wall, and I'm going to try to move through this as best I can. But worst case scenario, it's a birthday party. You guys usually stay at birthday parties a little bit longer, don't you? You don't run out. So I've got you. Anyways, no, if you have to go, you're going to go. But I want to take some time to really talk about that, to deep dive into this vision, this mission that goes way back in my life as well. And I know one of the first things people ask me when you mention to them, maybe you guys have had this happen to you too, when you mention that you're part of a church plant. People say, "Why do you church plant? Like, aren't there enough churches?" That's the one line I hear a lot. It actually happened 2 weeks ago around Kaylee. Yeah, Mitch was there too, around the fire over at Presidential. And I don't have time to go into all the details of that. There is a talk that I did at the bridge that outlines a lot of statistical and biblical reasons that takes about 35 minutes that you can go watch another time. The heart of this, though, is that it boils down to, even though you think there's a lot of churches out there, statistically for this area, but this is true of most areas, we have about half as many churches as what sociological experts believe to effectively reach a community. We have half as many as we need. The other problem is that 80%, statistically 80% of churches are in decline. They're not growing or in decline, which what that means is they're not actually creating a space where new people can pursue their faith and make decisions to follow Jesus. And that's unfortunate, and I'm not trying to pick on anybody. That's just raw statistics. Whereas you flip that out the other way, church planting has this incredible conversion rate, and I don't want to sound crass about that, just people meeting Jesus, because generally in a church plant, you have a group of people that are wildly engaged in mission. And by that happening, all of a sudden, that just spreads really quickly, and you don't really have a comfortable space because it's all new. So you go out into the community, you spend time with other people outside of the church, and that's one of my hopes all along is that you guys spend a lot less time in the church and more time outside of the church. That's the kind of stuff that happens in church planting. That's why we need church plants, is to make sure we have these communities and the spirit among Jesus followers that goes out and relentlessly goes after the people who don't know Jesus. That's what we're all about here. So the other thing in this is that there's these, some really unfortunate statistics going along with the church these days. And over the last several decades, on average, church attendance has been in decline by about 4%. That's over decades. I mean, that's a pretty consistent statistic. Doesn't mean some churches aren't growing. It just means overall the church, capital C church, is in decline. So that's pretty sad and disconcerting enough, and that goes back to what I was just talking about. As churches are comfortable, as people in churches are comfortable in their pews, comfortable in their churchy circles, you don't see the growth of the kingdom. You don't see new people coming to faith in Jesus Christ. Here's a more disturbing statistic, actually. This was done by Barna over COVID. And so they from March to September, I believe it was, they took these numbers and they found that 19% of practicing Christians, which are people they say, they have three categories, like it's a big part of their life. I don't remember the second one. The third one is they attend at least monthly. And then of churchgoers, what they say are people who attend at least every 6 months. In those categories, 19 and 22% respectively have not gone to church, even virtually, over the last 6 months. This actually confuses me, because I actually thought when church got easier and you could sit in your pajamas and not have to get the kids around, like church attendance would go up. I'm like, oh, this is easy. Now, like, I don't know if anybody will ever go back in person because this is nice, this is easy. And it's defied kind of what my projections were, and that actually 1 out of 5 people now that were actively involved in a church no longer have been going to a church. That should disturb you a little bit. Here's the thing, is if that most church people aren't attending church, do you think you actually have what it takes to give an unchurched person or a de-churched person a reason to come? Here's my suspicion about why we've seen this drop off in attendance, particularly over the last 6 months. I think there's probably an array of reasons, but because what's measured in there is online attendance too, I believe this is true. I think the number one reason why people aren't going to church right now is because they don't have a significant human connection to that church. And I would argue of the 80% that are consistently continuing to go to church, they probably are because they have a significant human connection to that church. And maybe they communicate online. Maybe they're part of a small group. But that's probably likely the reason they continue to engage in that way. In fact, I read an article lately, it was probably 2-3 weeks ago, I think it came out, and they looked at all the churches during the pandemic, and they tried to find some correlations, and they said, of the churches that found ways to thrive during this, there were 2 common denominators. One was a robust small group structure, and 2 was a leadership development program, leadership development opportunities. What does that tell you? That's human connection. That's human-to-human support, contact. And I think even though we can look at like the really sad, depressing kind of statistics on a downward in this, what I see is actually a real opportunity. Because I actually believe when people have lost that connection to the church, that it's because they don't have enough human contact, and then when they get that human connection, they actually have a reason to be a part of it. And one of the things that have came through this, so actually I want to back up a little bit. I think part of the reason is without that human connection is we just see a remnant that comes together. So I put together this little diagram. Hopefully you can understand it. But before kind of the pandemic, you see this a typical congregation makeup, right? With people kind of connected. Some are connected more, some aren't at all. During the pandemic, you see people fleeing out. And then afterwards, you see this remnant of connected people. And we have to ask ourselves, again, if we can't hardly keep people inside of the church who already profess to be Jesus followers, what do we have to offer that actually makes an unchurched or de-churched person interested in coming to church? So, again, the real opportunity here is because isolation, I believe, is one of the biggest difficulties, challenges, heartaches right now, it's an opportunity for us to be really intentional with how we live out the church by really investing deeply in relationships. This has been absolutely my goal from the beginning, is to build this relational model of the church. And so one of the other statistics that is actually really disturbing as well is this was done by a Gallup poll recently through the pandemic, and they found that overall it was somewhere in the 40% of people before this would have said they have, I think it's excellent mental health or something like that. As I think it was in this fall when they did this research, they said it dropped down to 33% of people would only say they had excellent mental health. And now what's crazy about that is you're like, well, still 1/3 is good. That means 2/3 of our nation is struggling with depression and mental illness right now at some level, some more severe than others. This is, again, the opportunity we have to be there to offer healing, to offer connection, to offer meaning and reason and connections in their life. What's really interesting in there is you can't probably see it in there. You can if you're home probably, but the only line that shows an increase in mental health is people who attend church weekly. You can't see it back there, but it says people who attend nearly weekly or monthly or seldom or never had significant decreases. But that was the only one that went up. And now I'll say this is an American statistic, so majority of these we're talking about as churches. It says faith institution or faith services, but majority are Christian churches. And what I would say to this, and what I think many of you would agree with me, is this is the power of Jesus and his grace that gives, that you have an opportunity every week when you show up for church. It's a supernatural giving of Jesus' grace. The other thing I go back to is this connection point. The people that are probably attending weekly, it's probably because they have significant connection to people in that church. And oh, by the way, look at their mental health scores are going up. Connection, to me, is everything for this church. So how do we do this? And this is where I said we're going to get into some of the nuts and bolts of, I'm going to remind some of you, because it's been a year since that vision meeting. Some have never seen this before in your life, so this is going to be new. I'm going to give you a snapshot. Don't want a slap shot, all right, of what this looks like and how Converge does this. And this is where our name ultimately came from. A bunch of people around the table wrestling with, what is this relational church? What would the name be? And that's where we landed on Converge, because it's this idea of people converging on other people and whatever path they're on and being there to walk with them. I love the illustration from the two leaving on the road to Emmaus after Jesus' death on the cross, and Jesus kind of walks alongside them down that whole road. This is how I envision our ministry. Highly relational, highly one-to-one or one-to-two kind of ministry. And when you go into this, you realize that if it was that simple and we all picked one or two people that we just really walked along life with, that trusted us, that really allowed us to not only pour into their lives, but they poured into our lives inside and outside of the church, and it would actually have this rippling impact all across the community, you'd be like, well, that's a no-brainer, Mitch. Why don't we do that? That's what we're trying to do. It's literally the buddy system. Have you guys ever watched Heavyweights, the movie? Have you ever seen that? Ben Stiller, come on. It's about a fat camp, and one of the things is the buddy system, and every time they said buddy, everybody yelled, buddy! And the deal was at camp you had to have your buddy with you, so everybody knew that they were alive and didn't die, or didn't, in that case, probably steal candy or whatever. But this is how I envision this Christian mission, is that it's the buddy system. We have somebody that we're walking along with, somebody inside the church, somebody outside of the church, and this is how this is going to grow. And so it starts with what I believe is the community, and it's the center circle. This is number 1 of 45, folks, so get ready. All right, this is Converge Community. This is the place that people come to worship God and to build deep connections with each other, to grow in their faith. And this is the place that right now is Center Ave, and we're going to talk more about that. But this is the place that I hope eventually your friends will come in to feel comfortable worshiping with us. After, hopefully, you do the walk of discipleship with them. What I love is this picture here, is it says in Acts 5, verses 12 and on here through 16, it says, this is the early church. in the book of Acts. It says, the apostles performed many signs and wonders among the people, and all the believers used to meet together in Solomon's colonnade. No one else dared to join them, even though they were highly regarded by the people. Nevertheless, more and more men and women believed in the Lord and were added to their numbers. As a result, people brought the sick into the streets and laid them on the beds and mats so that at least Peter's shadow might fall on some of them as he passed by. Crowds gathered also from the towns around Jerusalem, bringing their sick and those tormented by impure spirits, and all of them were healed. This is what I believe is a vision of the community, of that center circle. It's a place where people gather and worship and hang out and build relationships together. And the outsiders are like, I'm not going to go in there. It's a little weird, but I do respect you. Right? Did you hear that in the text there? I love that, actually, that picture. And eventually, people can't ignore what's going on in there. And so they start bringing them and the other people in for healing. Wouldn't it be amazing if this became not a hub for the pastor to convert your friends, but a hub for healing? A hub where people who are really broken and destitute, lonely, isolated, struggling with mental health come and feel truly loved, truly included. That's what this community is all about right here. You go out a little bit in this diagram. We're going to start from the outside and work in. You see all these little circles. There's a bunch of the 45 right there, just heads up. So these, what I would call is your circles. These are your spheres of influence. These are the people in your life. They represent neighbors, coworkers, family members, whoever they are, people you interact with pretty regularly in life. These are the people that God has actually put you alongside to be a pastor to. You're pastors. Welcome to the club. You're going to go and reach them in a way that I never could. You're going to reach them in deep, meaningful conversations and get through them to a way that I never could. This is why I fully believe that you're going to have a hard time inviting them here on a Sunday and getting them to follow Jesus just from me talking. It's going to happen from you guys building such an intentional relationship with them where they can actually ask you the hard things and not be afraid of what you're going to say. How many of you feel comfortable? I had a call from one of my best friends, and he was just having a hard day, and he's a business owner, and he's like, Mitch, I feel like I cannot say anything out loud right now because no matter what I say, people are going to get angry at me. What happens when you have that close 2, 3, 4 friends? You can say whatever you want, and even if they don't agree with you, they trust you, and they would never go after you, not like some of the stuff you see in the public dialogue right now. This is the power that I fully believe, actually, that the day of the kind of the tent revival is over, at least for now in America. I don't think you're actually going to be able to convince people very easily from a public voice and using whether it's guilt or shame tactics or whatever it is to try to convince them to come into the faith, to try to convince them to follow Jesus. What's going to convince them is the slow, intentional relationship building of you walking along another person and them trusting you so much that they can ask you about why your life is different. Not easier, but different. That's what's going to speak to people going forward. So those are your circles around there, and you see this actually happen. Some of you guys know the guy Paul in the book of Acts. He's a pretty prominent figure in the book of Acts, and he's traveling around starting churches all over Greece and Turkey, and he's in Greece and Corinth, Greece at the time. In verses 18:1, it says this, after this, Paul left Athens and went to Corinth. There he met a Jew named Aquila, a native of Pontus, who had recently come from Italy with his wife Priscilla, because Claudius had ordered all Jews to leave Rome. Paul went to see them, and because he was a tent maker, as they were, he stayed and worked with them. That's an interesting model. These are people who are just Jewish. They're not Jesus followers at this point. Paul is bonding with them on some common cultural connection. They're both Jewish people. And now all of a sudden, Paul's like, oh yeah, these people are tent makers too. Why don't I just help out and build some tents while I'm here? And it actually, there's a verse that follows up and says once Timothy gets there, he commits to preaching. Like he actually put preaching on hold to do some tent building with these two. And if you go on, you find out these are two very, very prominent characters in the church later on. This was that work of finding people in your sphere, in your circles, and just walking life with them and letting them get to a point where they're like, I actually care what you have to say. Yes, I'll listen to you. And not only that, I feel safe asking you why you do that without me thinking you're going to jump down my throat. So those are our circles. Then we move down into coming from that center circle, that Converge Community, our hangouts. Some of you guys have heard this. These are these spaces that you start merging, hopefully, people from those circles and people from your faith community, people from Converge Community. And you do it in a safe place that it's not super churchy. It's not meant to be high pressure. It's just meant to be a place where you can get to know other people. Because I've shared this with many of you, but the weird thing about most people's relationships with those outside of the church is they assume you're the only normal Christian. They're like, well, you're not weird like all the other Christians. You guys have had this, right? I mean, nobody's ever accused me of not being weird, but you know what I'm talking about. And this is the heartbeat of this is you start getting other people that you're friends with in the church, hanging out with those people, and they're like, wait, there's other church people that aren't weird, that I actually get along with, that I actually like doing things with, that are actually enjoyable and reasonable. Oh, I guess I could hang out with them more. And then on top of that, you're just starting to build these relationships where you start doing things together more often. And over time, you hopefully find these opportunities where people can have these significant conversations. These are the hangouts. We've done many of them. We were really doing a lot of them before March this past year. We had things going on almost every weekend, people coming into homes, going out. We did a bar crawl for Kaylee and I's birthday last year, inviting people in. I mean, I know you guys are probably thinking, bar crawl? The pastor did a bar crawl? Yes, the pastor did a bar crawl because we fully believe in going out and being in the church and not waiting for people to come to us. If you're waiting for that to happen, it's going to be a while, I think. So that's kind of what our hangouts look like. We've seen some of them. You saw some of them in the videos. I know the Stoffers did a Harvest Fest outdoors this fall with a lot of fun. We've seen some smaller versions of that where people will just literally order a pizza and invite a couple people over to play games. This is what hangouts are. They don't have to be complicated. They're literally just making sure you're spending time with people and building intentional relationships with them. All right, so we got to keep pushing through this, but the last one there is the huddles. And in our huddles, these are the things you heard mentioned in some of our open mic there. But this is the place, call them small groups in some churches. They're real small groups here, 2, 3, 4 people. And the reason that I think that's so important is because many of you have a hard time being completely open and transparent in a group of 4, 5, 6 people. It's just hard. Even for me, who's pretty extroverted, I don't get super open or transparent in a bigger, mid-sized group. But you get 2, 3 people in there, I could tell you just about everything. And I have no problem doing it. This is a place of real trust, accountability, and this is the heart of transformation where I believe is going to happen in the church. I hope you guys are affected when you come and listen to a message, whether it's from me or somebody else in this community on Sundays, but I actually fully believe most of the growth is going to take place in the context of those huddles, because these are the people pushing you and challenging you to be the person Jesus has called you to be. And they're going to be the people, not only that you feel comfortable sharing your challenges in life, they're actually going to be the people that gently come alongside you and help you be that person as well. These are our huddles, and we've got some fun news about those huddles coming up. So we see this model, obviously, Jesus and his disciples. We see it modeled with Barnabas and how he took John Mark and Paul under his wing, and I love that because Paul and John Mark got scrappy and got mad at each other and split apart at some point, and eventually they came back together, which is really funny. It just shows the heart of the church and how sometimes you do life together and then you don't, but then you have that bond down the road and you have that season where you really grew together. That's the heart of the huddles. So this is our model. You see it up there. And you can count 45 circles in there if you want to do that right now. But that's what that looks like. Those small dots are the huddles. And I even put some on the edges there that aren't completely in the church because I fully believe this is the way that people will come to faith is you starting these little groups of 2 or 3 with people who actually have tough questions and are journeying. That maybe you're going to go through an alpha group or something like that together to have them talk about some of those tough questions. And you're going to do the work of discipleship. You're not going to just invite them here and hope Pastor Mitch has this really awesome talk that gets them on their knees, confessing their sins. That's not going to happen. I'm here to tell you. It's going to happen in your huddles. And then eventually, when they're ready to follow Jesus, hopefully they come join us in this community. Or maybe, like some of the people Paul influenced, we'll go start another church, which would be pretty awesome. So that's what this is about. This is who we're about. It's through significant friendships that absolutely are going to take time and intentionality. That's how this thing is going to go out. It's not going to go out from this big public speaker thing happening. This is the place where we come together, build, grow, and we go out and are the church. So how are we going to do that going forward? I said we're going to give some news on some things going on here. Well, one of the things that we're going to do is we're going to start a new rhythm. We've been doing this every 3-week rhythm. And I know for some of you, it's been a little confusing. I get that. I apologize for that. But we also, part of the reason was we didn't want to lose our focus on mission. We're limited. We have limited people, limited resources. You start doing more and more worship, that starts dominating all your time. And so we are adding a little bit more worship in, but we're going to keep our strong identity focused on mission. So every Sunday, every final Sunday of the month is going to be our Engage weekend, where we shut down church and we go either encourage you to go do some of those hangouts, or you come do maybe one of these more organized projects like we've been doing over the last several months, or both. That would be great too. But that's going to happen on the last Sunday of every month, and occasionally on some special holidays or for mission weekends. I'm here to tell you, I was a guy who did the 4th of July preaching gig a lot. There's barely anybody there. I'm just saying, if you guys aren't going to be there, I'd rather you out actually doing mission with people outside of the church. So we might have a few of those too. Those holidays are for mission weekends where we engage. And then every other Sunday, or on every Sunday besides that final Sunday, we're going to lean into more worship and make sure we're building this worship environment, this family here at Converge Community. So that's one thing we're going to be doing. And then the next thing we're going to be doing in 2021 is hopefully finding our location. Senator Av has been incredibly gracious letting us be here. But my hope would be that we get so big we need somewhere else. And so in the meantime, and I haven't talked to Andrew about this, so this is a weird way to do this, but I was going to actually suggest maybe that we partner and put a big old tent out this summer, and they have the nice, beautiful lawn here, and be able to do something like that in the meantime. But eventually, hopefully this fall, we have that place where we're going to land and call our home going forward. We mentioned Huddles. One of the things that I want to do is start some new Huddles right now. There's some of you that aren't in Huddles, and I think need to be in Huddles. I don't actually think it's a mistake. We've had a little bit of attrition in our community over the last year, and here's the deal. Of most of the people that have left, and some had to leave they moved and that sort of thing, but most of the people who left were not involved in a huddle. Do you think that's a surprise? I don't. Goes exactly back to the thing we're talking about. I really want you guys in a huddle where you can grow, be challenged, and build significant connections to the church and to that community. And so we're going to have new huddles. Kenzie is leading one. I'm leading one. I think there's a couple more that are interested. We also want to give you the out. I mentioned that Paul and John Mark thing. I hope you guys aren't in fights. But we want to give you the freedom to kind of spread, go different ways for a season and maybe come back. So if you're saying, hey, I just kind of want to spice it up, I want to try something new, I'm giving you permission to leave that huddle as long as you're going to a new huddle. And if you're the person that's feeling left and betrayed, come and I'll hold your shoulder and we'll cry together about that. But we'll find you a new huddle or add to your huddle as well. But I really want to encourage that to really dive into that. And we're going to be using some content, hopefully. We never had that conversation. But we're going to be using some content, Sarah Roos helping me with that, to parallel this new series that we're going to start up next week in A New Lease on Life, looking at the book of Philippians. And so we're going to try to give you some content. You don't have to do that, but it's there available for Huddles if you guys want to use that as well. So that's coming. In the Huddle front, we want you guys obviously leaning into more hangouts, more relationships. But one thing I really hope is that we see 25 baptisms by the end of August. That's a big, audacious goal, but I believe God will do it. I absolutely do. And I believe by your faithfulness, going out, leaning into relationships, we'll see that happen. Those baptisms measure transformation. It could be people who had been marginally connected to the church for a long time and never been baptized and wanted to do it again. It could be people who have never been a part of a church and saying, I think I'm in. And we get to baptize them too. And we have a few babies to baptize here pretty soon too. But unless you guys are going to have a new baby in like 3 months, you're going to have to do that, like most of the 25 here through a circle of your friends and that sort of thing. So that's what I'm hoping for going forward. And I ultimately need each one of you guys to help all of us, to help us accomplish those goals. So we're not going to do this faith thing solo. We're just not. We've had a year of isolation, and we're done with it, okay? We can be safe. We can have mass. If you're not safe coming here, you can do huddles. You can be in mass. There's no more reason. And we're also going to be making sure we're putting Jesus at the center of all of our relationships. Doesn't mean you have to be weird. It just means you live on mission, understanding that you want them so badly to experience the same joy, hope, and faith that you have. I think one of the biggest hurdles to us actually not communicating the gospel well through our actions, lives, words, is because we don't actually believe well enough or enough that their life will be better with Jesus. And until you actually believe that and actually believe why, you won't do anything different. And so that's a little homework for you. But that's what I'm hoping for as we go forward, that you'll walk alongside of them in the buddy system and put that first. Because at the end of the day, this faith, and I know our American way of thinking likes to think about faith as this internal kind of ascent toward God, and I'm telling you that's 100% wrong. This is a community march right to heaven. This is what we're going for. So I need you guys to help me with the journey. Some of you guys have been in from the beginning, and I love that, and I'm going to ask you guys to double down. Some of you guys, I'm asking you to push in for the first time and be all in to Converge. And so you guys have these rocks spread around all your seats. And the band's going to come up right now as we go through your band. You may want to bring your rocks. You don't have to. You can do it later too. But I want you to, if you're saying, you know what, Mitch, I'm in. I want to be a part of this. I want to be a part of this community. I'm going to actually ask you to write your name on this thing. And on one side, you're going to have your name. And the other side, I want you to think through at least one way that you're going to commit to be an active leader role in the Converge community. It could be using a gift. It could be using a talent. It could be making a goal. Resources. There's lots of ways you could do that. But I want you to think through, what is God calling me to do specifically to help build into Converge community? If you're at home, I gave you a little email instruction, 2 email instructions actually, word count. I want you guys, if you had a rock, hopefully you can get that out and do the same thing. If you didn't, go run to your driveway, go get a rock. If you didn't, I can bring you rocks too. I have more. But I want you guys to do this, and I will collect those rocks from you. But I want you to put your name on there, and one way you're going to commit to being an active role and leader here at Converge Community. And so maybe some of you are thinking, you know what, I'm going to use my time, and I'm going to really push in and make sure this is a priority. Some of you are going to say, you know what, I've been kind of holding off a little bit on giving. I'm going to give more. Some of you are going to say, you know what, I have this singing talent, and I've been shy about it. I'm going to be up here and help Jake and Carter for the weeks ahead. Whatever that is, write that down, write your name. So that's my heart for you guys. Take some time during this first song, pray on that, and I'll invite you guys who are here during that first song to feel free to come up, or second song, feel free to come up and put it in here. If you're one of the first ones, you may not want to drop it. It's glass, so you'll have to be careful about that. But this is literally going to be our membership roles going forward, and we're going to carry them around with us because we're not a church in a building, we're a church on the move. So go ahead, band, and you guys can take it away from there.